Hello and welcome to everyone at the Poison Pen and those tuning in virtually to another author event. I'm John Charles, and the Poison Pen is delighted to have with us one of our favorite authors, Tori Eldridge, whose new book is Dance Among the Flames. Before we begin, if this is your first time attending an author event at the Poison Pen, our format is rather simple. I have some questions for Tori. We'll allow some time for you to ask any questions you might have. And then I'm sure Tori would love to sign copies of her new book and her older titles for you after the program. If you'd also like to know more about future events at the Poison Pen, upcoming authors who are visiting, and new books we have coming, it's real easy to do. Just sign up for our e-newsletter. You can do that at the front on your way out, and you'll always know who's coming to the Poison Pen and what their new books are. Now I'd like to welcome back, and it's lovely to have you in person, Tori.
Oh, thanks so much, John Charles. The last time I was here in person,
What's your first book?
I was speaking with you, and it was for my debut, The Ninja Daughter, so this kind of feels full circle.
It does. It's very zen, I guess, is what we'd say. Why don't we start by having you tell us a little bit about yourself, because before you were a writer, you also had another career in a different art field.
Yeah, that is true. So I wasn't one of these authors who always knew that she wanted to be a novelist. That came later. So when I was 16, what I wanted to do was sing, dance, and act on Broadway. So I was fortunate in that I think I made that happen at 19, and then did a few other Broadway musicals and left Cats to come out west and went to Los Angeles to try out TV and film. Ended up on The Love Boat and some other shows and movies and whatnot. And got married, raised a couple kids, started writing screenplays, which we can talk about because it actually relates to this book. And then I discovered the martial arts and got a wee bit obsessed with that. And 5th degree black belt later, and a few other things later, I just kept wanting to come back to fiction. And I'll explain why I mean by come back to fiction. And so that was about 10 years ago, and ever since then, I've been full-time writing.
It's kind of nice in a way that your new book, Dance Among the Flames, kind of ties into your very first writing efforts, which was screenplays. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this book was inspired by a screenplay I wrote in the 1990s. Oh my gosh. And that screenplay actually got a semifinals nod for the Academy Nicole Fellowship. But everybody who read it was pointing out the pros. You should be writing a novel. And so I did. I did more research, and I expanded it into what would be a very early precursor for Dance Among the Flames. And I loved it. I loved the book. I loved the process. I loved everything about it. But you know what I didn't want to do? Was the writing business. I didn't know what the writing business was at that time. I just knew that I didn't want to do it. And I had just discovered the martial arts, and I had 2 sons. And so it wasn't until 13 years later that that's the pull I'm talking about. And I started writing something else, and I thought, I ought to check what's in that cupboard, And I brought it out, and I went, wow, okay. And it became the project on which I learned my craft.
What can you tell those listening in that have not read it yet a little bit about Dance Among the Flames? What is the book about?
Whew, okay.
And it's a tough one to summarize.
Yeah. It is a tough one to summarize. It is about a desperate mother who rises from the slums of Bahia, Brazil, to embrace dark Quimbanda magic in a quest for power and revenge. It spans 3 continents, 40 years, a past life in 1560 France. It is sweeping, it's dark, it dives into really gritty situations, as you can imagine, from somebody coming up from poverty and bigotry and classism and abuse. And it looks at this amazing spiritualism, the Brazilian spiritualism, which I personally found so fascinating.
I was fascinated, too, by that. What can you tell us about the religions? And I'm sure I'm getting them wrong.
Umbanda and Quimbanda?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, all right. So Umbanda, they call it Candomblé in Bahia. Some people also call it Macumba, but that's not always, an accepted term. So I go with Umbanda. And it came over to Brazil in the hearts of the African slaves. And they were bringing over their Yoruba pantheon of gods. And they integrated that with the indigenous Brazilian traditions and animism and ancestral worship. And of course, none of this was going to go over well with the Portuguese slave masters. And so they secretized it with Catholic saints. And so it is completely unique and quite amazing. It involves channeling spirits and gods so that the practitioners can speak, one-on-one to get comfort, wisdom, guidance, this sort of thing. And they do it with song and dance and drumming, and it's quite vivacious. But the interesting thing is, it's not the main religion of Brazil. Catholicism is, by about 98%.
Fascinating.
Yeah, but it's so integrated in the culture that it's one of those things where, there are so many things we do in a culture that we don't realize might be religious. We think it's superstition or fun or just a celebratory thing.
Like when you sneeze and people say bless you.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You don't really think about that. And so that's integrated, the Umbanda. And of course, Quimbanda, well, there's always got to be a dark side, doesn't there? And so that's where you're really diving into magic that, to me, this is my perception of it, feels more self-serving, self-oriented. So when you're doing magic to help yourself or to help my client and to help you, there may be some other people that get hurt that do not align with what helps you, right? So yeah, it can get a little dark. It isn't always, but it can.
Place plays a really significant role in all of your books, including Dance Among the Flames. What is your connection to Brazil, and how did you want to portray it in the book?
Yeah. It's so interesting. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? I had this idea for a screenplay, even before that one. And I had it set in Brazil because I was envisioning the Christ Redeemer on the Corcovado and the scene and this thing. That screenplay didn't work. I had to toss it. But I really started becoming captivated Brazil from the research for that. And that's when I decided I had to dive deeper into the country and the culture and find what it was about it that was speaking to me, what was fascinating me, not just the place and the culture. And that ended up being Umbanda. Yeah.
What surprised you the most about your research into Brazilian culture?
Surprised me the most. Well, here's the funny thing. When you start researching in the 90s, no internet, and I was a late adapter, so, remember those research rooms where you have to actually, research in the room? Yeah, that kind of thing. But I had a friend who was in Malibu. She was from Rio de Janeiro. And so I used to call her, for little tidbits and to clarify some things. And I called her one day and she's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry I haven't been able to talk to you, but I'm getting on a plane. I'm going home." "Oh, you should come with me." And my kids were like, this big. And I went, okay. So in 10 days, I got a passport and a visa, left 2 little kids with my husband, and went bye-bye, and went for 3 nights. Can you imagine? It was a 14-hour flight. Yeah. Now, when I was there, what was so amazing, because I got to stay with her aunt. Who gets to do that? This is an author's dream, and I got to stay in that part of town and experience walking. I remember I looked Brazilian. Everybody thought I was Brazilian, including TSA and the passports and everything. They were like, so her aunt would say, "Hide your jewelry. Don't show your jewelry." And my friend would say, if we're walking along the streets and I start speaking in Portuguese, stop talking and nod, like you understand. And then we would drive through places, at night, and she'd never stop. Red lights, never stop. Just keep going through. And so there was a real sense of, oh, you got to be careful around here. You have to be careful. So I had this huge local experience with her, all sorts of things. But I also had a tourist experience because she showed me around. I even got to watch the semifinal soccer match from another cousin's apartment building.
Good heavens. And
here was an interesting thing. The entire city shut down. Everything was decorated in yellow and green, and during that soccer match, there was not, it was like COVID hit in Shanghai. There was not a car in the street. But anytime something happened, you could hear it through the walls. So that was interesting. But when I was up at the Corcovado and then driving through the pollution, oh my God, the pollution, and the favelas, the slums, I think what struck me the most about my research, especially in-person research, is that Rio de Janeiro in particular was one of the most beautiful and the most ugly places I've ever seen at the same time. Yeah.
Brazil culture incorporates many different aspects to it, just like your book kind of borrows from a lot of different genres. And something you'd written, let's see, you've said that the essence of horror is dread, which is why horror and thrillers kind of overlap. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about that mingling of horror and thrillers?
Yeah. So you might be getting the feel for this. This is a genre-bending book. Mm-hmm. It has that deep dive into culture and character that you might find in historical or literary fiction. It's got a very strong dark fantasy because there are Brazilian gods. And there's channeling and mysticism. And there's horror. There are some very horrifying elements in this thing. And then the last quarter of it is as nonstop action thriller as anything I've ever written. So it has all these different genres. But at the core is this blend of, I think, horror and thriller. And so to me, at the core of horror is dread. And also, I think you find that in thrillers as well, because the difference to me between a mystery and a thriller, a mystery you're trying to solve the crime, the clue, whatever, you're not necessarily in any danger. For it to be a thriller, you must be in danger. The protagonist must be in danger. And of course, in horror, if you're dealing with dread and you're dealing with fear, these are core emotions, which is why I think these genres really grab people and draw them in, because these are universal feelings, and you can really explore in dark fiction, but you can still crawl into your bed at night in your own nice little life, but you can explore these really dark facets of the world and conquer your monsters, so.
Well, I think kind of playing with horror also allowed you to maybe explore more intense emotions too than you could in a regular traditional thriller.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think anything with horror amps up the emotion. Certainly in this book, it has a lot of emotion, all sorts. Because it's looking at love. It's looking at romantic love, family love, parental love, and the potential corruption of that. And so we're really looking at all sorts of relationships that are going on, and it turns up a lot of emotions. It certainly did for me when I was writing.
Like many of your books, there's also kind of a food aspect to the story.
I love food.
Talk a little bit about how you incorporated that into Dance Among the Flames.
Absolutely. As with the Lily Wong series, whenever I'm writing about a culture or learning about a culture, I want to eat their food. I want to listen to their music. I want to dance, right? These are things that are very important to get a feel and a sense of a culture. And so the food with this book, Serafina Olegario, her mother was a chef, and Serafina herself gained a lot of talents in cooking, and so that comes out. And then throughout the story, you'll see a lot of food and different things sipped in, and the caipirinha cocktail. There's a whole scene where a character is having this big conversation while fixing this caipirinha cocktail. And things like that where I can weave those things in, I think really kind of give people, and certainly me, a sense of being there in place.
makes kind of a nice segue because we've talked about your new book, but food also plays an important role in the Lily Wong series. For those that may not be familiar, either listening virtually or here, tell us about that series and how it kind of originated.
Oh, yeah, I'd be happy to. So the Lily Wong mystery thrillers are very different, right? Mm-hmm. They are about a Chinese-Norwegian modern-day ninja from Los Angeles with Joy Luck Club family issues. Very different from Serafina Olegario rising from the slums of Brazil to become a wielder of Quimbanda magic on her quest for power and revenge. Very different books. So Lily Wong, she's a heroine, you know. Now, I draw from my own Chinese and Norwegian heritage for that. I'm also Hawaiian, but I didn't put that into the book. And also the ninja history and other martial arts. And of course, I've lived in Los Angeles. And so I like to root my fiction in fact and authenticity as much as I can make that happen. That's like really, really important to me. And again, with the food, Lily's father, her Norwegian father from North Dakota, is an authentic Hong Kong cuisine chef. And she lives above his restaurant. So you can imagine the food that she gets. And the third book, The Ninja Betrayed, takes her to Hong Kong. Oh my gosh, the food is insane, I love going there because, again, you know, I love bringing that new location, but also my daughter-in-law is from Hong Kong. So once again, when I went to Hong Kong, I got the local treatment. It was with all the relatives and my daughter-in-law. So I find these things to be very helpful.
What is your own writing process like? Do you have an outline? Do you know from the beginning where the story's going? Do you just start and hope it works out?
Gosh, just start and write. Those people scare me. I have lots of friends who are pantsers, and they scare the life out of me. Maybe one day I can do that. I've done it with short stories, but a novel, oh my gosh. You know what? Honestly, I don't write fast enough to be a pantser, because if I take the wrong route, I mean, we're talking another 6 months. So I come up with an idea, usually when I'm hiking. And then I go for a hike, and I start like spanning it out, and I like to dictate notes. And then I usually have to go for another hike, and I fill in the gaps, you know. So now I have a sense of a first act, second, third, fourth, and, you know, things that are going in. And when I think I have enough, I start working on a synopsis, filling in these scenes, and then I move it to Scrivener. It used to be poster board, now it's Scrivener. And I start populating that with imaginary chapters and trying to get an idea of what in my story that I've just like put out here is going to go there. And what it does is it helps me see where I am. Like, oh, I've got a lot in the beginning, but that big middle is really empty. You know, and it helps me see where I need to put things. And oh, I need more going on. I need more things. And so, of course, I go back for another hike. You know, but by the time I start actually writing, it's in order. Yeah.
You have been writing for a while now. You have a number of books to your credit. What do you know today as a writer that you wish you could go back in time and tell yourself when you were first starting out?
Oh, goodness. You know, people always ask that. I have a really hard time with that question. I think because everything has its time. And there's certain information that I want at a certain time in my life. And I found, even as a teacher, I found this to be true. I could tell students things, and if I tell them too early, it has no meaning. You know what I mean? So sometimes you just need to hear things and learn things on the way. The other thing was, it took 7.5 years before I got the 2-book deal for The Ninja Daughter and The Ninja's Blade. So that's 7.5 years of writing every day, full day, attending a whole lot of conferences, watching a lot of panels, making a lot of mentors and building relationships and learning a lot of stuff. So when my debut hit, I felt pretty prepared. That said, I had no idea, even with all of that, I had no idea how much work would be involved. I'm still trying to wrap my brain around that. And every subsequent book, it feels like the workload increases exponentially. Then, see, it's a good thing they didn't tell me that too soon.
Well, especially since it's not just writing the book anymore. It's
No.
writing the book, it's marketing, it's dealing with all that. Talk about the other side to a writer's life.
Yeah, yeah. So we're always writing a book, and we're usually editing a book, you know, with our editor, and we're probably getting ready to promote a book. And if you have enough books, there's probably another book that you're marketing from behind, which is what I mean. And then on the way to this, there are articles that you have to write, especially when you know, book launch is approaching, and interviews that you have to answer. And those things take time, right? And the more involved you are, the more you want to give back, because other writers are so generous with their time over the years. So there's volunteer. So I'm the debut authors program coordinator for the International Thriller Writers. And I've been that for a couple years, I guess. And so there are lots of volunteer items, and then there are panels, and then I'm fortunate enough to be invited onto anthologies and short stories, and there's just so much to do that it starts to become. Fortunately, I'm disciplined, so I start writing very early in the morning, and I keep working all day. I just change the nature of the work as my creative brain and energy fatigues.
Is it the ninja training?
Ninja training is helpful, actually. It really is. It's very helpful.
You mentioned short stories, and I believe this year you have one in the Mystery Writers of America anthology.
Yes! Oh my gosh, this one is so dear to my heart. So the Mystery Writers of America, they put out an anthology every year, and I was fortunate enough, I submitted in a blind submission, and I was fortunate enough to have a story in it. It's called Crime Hits Home. And this story is really precious because it dives into my native Hawaiian roots. This is something I've never done before. And it felt very weighty. I really wanted to get it right. I mean, it's one thing to be an author and set your thriller in Hawaii, you know, maybe where you've even grown up, or maybe that you've just visited a lot. It's another entirely to be Kanaka Maoli, writing about your people in your island. Whole other thing. And so what came of this, and this has happened with me many times with a short work, it inspired a novel. And I could tell it did as I was writing this short story, because out of it came this whole ohana with Makalani, Pahukula's whole ohana and this family and their search for these two missing cousins while the family is imploding. And so actually I'm working on the novel right now. That's my work in progress.
Do you find that you gravitate more? Is it easier for you to write longer or shorter? Or is both you're ambidextrous, I guess, as a writer?
I think longer. I think I'm more a marathon kind of person, which is why I think every time I start writing a short story, I end up plotting
a novel.
A novel. Yeah, I mean, all right, so Dance Among the Flames came from a screenplay. The screenplay is very short, relatively speaking. The whole Lily Wong series came from a short story. I had a short story set in an apocalypse that I wrote. I wrote a novel of this during the pandemic. I actually wrote half of it years before the pandemic hit, and I started writing the finishing end at January 2020, and it's set in an antimicrobial resistant future with conspiracies. Yes. I actually finished that and went, oh my gosh, nobody wants to read this. Yeah. And then I thought, oh, I know, I'll tone down the horror of the pandemic, I'll amp up the conspiracy. I shelved it. Fortunately, it's set in the future. It has time. Maybe I'll bring it out in 10 years or something. I don't know. We'll see.
How do you connect with readers as an author? Do you have favorite social media platforms? What's your...
Connecting with readers is one of my very favorite things of being an author. And that was a surprise. I didn't know this was going to be a thing for me. But it really is. So I love being on social media. And they're all different. I really enjoy Instagram. I'm very visual, so I love the pictures, and there's a lot of readers on Instagram. But I love Facebook because my Hawaii people and my ninja people and all these communities, we're all on Facebook. And so we actually have, conversations, and we know each other, and, in real life. And so there's a meaningful thing that happens there. Twitter, I'm kind of getting a handle on. I'm getting a handle. It's crazy because I've got over 12,000 followers, but I'm just getting a handle on it. But the other two I really like. But I enjoy book club engagements. I crashed one of them here, which was so much fun. I heard they were having a book club meeting for one of my books, and I called up Pat and I said, "How about I just crash it?" He's like, "Oh my God, that'd be awesome." I dig it. I love it.
In addition to connecting with readers, you're a reader yourself.
Oh.
And that's influenced your writing from your mystery and horror roots to today. What have you read that you want to share with other readers?
What have I read? Okay, well, right now I'm listening to, I always have a book on audiobook. I have a different book I'm actually reading. So the audiobook that I'm listening to now is Jonathan Mayberry's new fantasy epic. He went from Joe Ledger, science, military action, to this wild thing, and I love it. And it's called Kagan the Damned. And so I'm listening to that. I read Alma Katsu's The Fervor. Love that. I read The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. Oh, that was something.
That was dark, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just kind of like pulling. And Boyd Morrison and his sister Beth wrote a medieval thriller.
Really?
Yeah, he used to write with Clive Clusler. So talk about a change. I love authors. And all these authors that I named, by the way, like me, they all write in a bunch of different genres. And they blend genres. And I enjoy that. I enjoy that as a reader. I enjoy it as a writer.
You've mentioned a little bit about what's coming next. Can you elaborate, or would you rather not?
Nah, because I'm still writing.
Okay. Maybe we should take some questions from some of you.
Sure, I'd love questions.
Okay.
I'm just curious. I'm fascinated by I think everybody at our core would love to be an author. Relate something, put it out there. Do you find when you're writing that you're consciously aware of what are my readers going to think, or do you just try to be true to yourself and be damned what anyone else thinks?
Yeah, do I ever think what readers are going to think? No, it never occurs to me. It really doesn't. And I do tend to get lost. I think coming from an acting background, I tend to be a method author. So, and I've got this wild imagination, as you will see when you read Dance Among the Flames. Yeah, it's a wild imagination. And I tend to lose myself in those characters, and then, we go where we go.
You really can't write to the market. It's almost impossible to do
Well,
that.
The market keeps changing,
Right,
so,
yeah.
it's like hitting a target that's vanishing. Not even a moving target, a vanishing target.
Well, that's what I was curious about.
Yeah.
If you try to write to a market, it may change tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be true to yourself.
Yeah. I will say sometimes I've written for a genre. Like when I knew I wanted to submit to Crime Hits Home, I knew it was a mystery, When I wrote Dance Among the Flames, especially when that started as a screenplay, I didn't know genres. I just read. I read everything. And then when my husband was a producer and we got all these screenplays in, I read all the screenplays. And aside from romantic comedy, horror, thriller, the basics, I never really thought about that. I just had this wild idea for a story. And it wasn't until, kind of more recently when you're trying to sell it and you realize, how do you explain this thing? I don't know. When it was a screenplay, we used to get coverage, and my husband would get this great coverage, but never any comps. There were never any comps.
Well, publishing has changed a little bit, so I think it's a little bit easier for you as a writer now. 20 years ago, if you tried to sell something that was a mix of genres, you only had 5 choices, the big 5 publishers. Now you can kind of go with a smaller press.
I think that's true. That's one of the things that's wonderful about independent presses, the small, the medium, and all the imprints is that, you know, they're more interested in all these other things, and so there's a place. You know, it's easier to, you can find a place. Sometimes it takes a while, you know, but you can.
Other questions for Tori? She'll ask you questions if you don't ask her.
Oh, be bold. I have answered the meaning of life, right?
Very quick question.
Yeah.
What have been some of the challenges of independently publishing versus publishing through somebody like Paulus for your first read?
Well, by independently publishing, you mean like a boutique publisher?
Exactly. Advance from the
Okay,
yeah.
you know, because you have like self-publishing and then, you know, smaller presses and well, you know, Paulus, you know, that's, I guess they're like a small press, and my imprint of that, Agora Books, is the diversity-focused crime fiction imprint of Paulus. And so it's quite different, I imagine, because I have not been with like Simon Schuster or Penguin or, you know, Random House, that kind of a thing. But you know, it's smaller. You're going to have less people working, which means you're going to really have to put in a lot of energy. You know, I have to put in a lot of energy for myself. All authors do. They could be with the biggest place, you know, there is, and you're still going to have to put in a lot of energy. But, you know, the smaller the press, I think probably the bigger that happens. You know. The thing I love about running Wild Press, which is the home where Dance Among the Flames found a home, is that the mission for them is to publish books that don't fit neatly in a box. And when I saw that, I went, oh, yes. Oh, yes.
That's great.
Yeah.
I've always been fascinated by the importance of titles, because people don't think they matter. But they can sell a book. They can make it or break it.
The importance of what?
A title, a book title.
Oh, a title.
Yeah.
Oh, a title. Oh, my. Yeah, this is not the first title. Oh, my. No, there were many titles. There were many titles. This book, you'll see, it is a really expansive book. Lisa Unger called it a sweeping, you know, tale or something. I think Kirkus called it an epic. It is a very big book, and there are a lot of ways to tell this book, and I tried them all. Because like I said, it was the book on which I learned my craft. At one point, I had both this and The Ninja Daughter in submission at the same time. Either one could have gone, you know, but that happened first. But even when it was in submission, I would get an epiphany and say, oh, you know, I need to try it from this character's point of view. You know, a good friend of mine, Thomas F. Monteleone, wonderful writer, huge in horror especially, he gave me a very good piece of advice. He read one of the very early versions and gave me some wonderful critiquing, and he said, whose story is this? And I said, oh, well, there's these three characters and this convergence, and then he goes, whose story is this? And so that who changed. The main points of view changed. The structure changed. The timeline changed. There were so many ways that telling the story. I did one rendition where I began by cutting 30,000 words, put them away, and rearranged it. And then one day, I had an epiphany. And I said, for crying out loud, it's Serafina Olegario's book. That's whose story it is. It's Serafina's story. And from that moment on, it was like, okay, now I have it.
Okay. Your roots, literary roots, are in screenwriting. Do you think that's made you the kind of writer that, as Elmore Leonard used to say, the best writers leave out the words readers skip over? So
Give out the words readers trip over?
No, they skip. They leave out the words that readers don't bother reading. So do you think that's influenced your?
Screenwriting has made a huge, it was very formative for me, because I am always conscious of description with economy. I need to find the right words. This is one of the reasons why I can't do the pantser thing. They call it a vomit pass, where you just write whatever. For some reason, I can't seem to do that. I cannot bear it. I cannot bear to put those words on a page. I can dictate that on a hike and copy paste it into something, but I can't write those things. So that's why I do all that outlining and summarizing before, so that I know where it's going. But so much for me with the prose is, I don't want to say in 20 words what I can say in 5 if I choose the right 5 words. And if I've already said it, I don't want to keep repeating it in another way. And I want to get into a chapter as late as I can. I want to get out of that chapter as soon as is right. And so those, I think, are very screenwriting kinds of mentality. That, and I'm visual. So I tend to be kind of cinematic. I tend to see things.
Question for you. Has being a writer changed the way you read? In the sense that you see the scenes more?
I think so. I think being a writer now, there's a little critical thinking in there, but I still manage to just read for enjoyment. Like my son is a film editor, and he can't really just watch a film to just enjoy it, but I can read a book to just enjoy it, and I'm very glad of that. But I think when I think about it consciously, then that kind of critical thing, ooh, that worked in, that pulled in, did this, and that was a cool thing. There's that element in there too.
So you said you're very visual, which I think you are. You told me earlier that you're kinetic, which I think you are. But you also talk into your thing, your phone or whatever, and record what you're saying while you're on your hike. And don't you think it's because it goes in your ear and you can hear how it sounds in your head for what you want to write?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's the singer in me. So I was an actor and a singer and a dancer, right? So we've talked about the actor and the whole method writing of diving and kind of becoming that character. And by the way, when I write, I talk to myself constantly in voices and gestures and posture. And when I do fight scenes, I choreograph them on myself. For the Ninja Betrayed, there was a scene where Lily had to fight in a car, and of course I went into my car in the garage. So there's that physicality, but the singer in me, that may be one of the most important things for me as a writer, because to me, prose is music. There's a crescendo and a decrescendo, and there's cadence, and there's impact, and there's staccato, and there's legato, and you have to vary it up, or you fall asleep in a song, right? If somebody just kind of sings all one level, everybody's asleep in the audience. You need to engage them and build it like a roller coaster and everything. So I think when I write, look at me all moving. That's the dancer. So when I write, I'm doing that. But I also, like you said, I need to hear the words. So when I'm writing, even if it's not dialogue, I'm saying it out loud because I need to hear how it sounds. It has to sound good to me. Yeah.
Have any of your books been turned into audio?
They've all been turned into audio. Yeah. The Lily Wong thriller series is narrated by Natalie Naudis, who is amazing. She was an opera singer, so I was like, oh, that was my training, opera. It was like, we bonded, and she's, bi-Asian, biracial Asian. I was like, yes. And she has this fabulous Mandarin and Cantonese accent. It was fabulous. She's such a pro, such a pro. Dance Among the Flames audiobook comes out May 31st, and I don't know who the narrator is. I have not heard. I'm very excited to find out. But that's coming out from Blackstone Audio, just like the Lily Wong thriller series.
Tori, do you think there's an advantage of working with, not Simon & Schuster, not some of the big boys, but your voice is heard better by a smaller publisher?
Oh.
Because they take you seriously and go, we're going to grab Tori and we're going to make her the author that she can be.
That could very well be. And so I can't compare because I haven't been over there. But what I will say, For instance, with the Lily Wong thriller series, the covers, I was so involved. That's a luxury. Most authors will tell you, whew, they're lucky if they get a little meeting way in advance that says, so what are some things that are important to you? Do you have any favorite colors? Are there any favorite symbols? And then maybe they give you a choice between A and B, and maybe they go with the letter you chose. That's what I've heard. That was not my experience with either of these covers, and I love all of my covers. Both the people at Agora Books, Polis, and also Running Wild Press, they allowed me to be really involved, and that was really neat. It was a really great creative process, and I think because of that, the covers feel so meaningful to me. Not only visually tantalizing, but there's a lot of meaning in that. There's an artist in this book, and so art is predominant theme in this, and so I wanted it to have this artistic thing. Obviously I wanted there to be flames, and I wanted a hint to be able to, maybe you can see it, maybe you can't, this dancer coming out of these flames. And these book covers, all of them, they're one of these things where you look at it the first time and you see this, and then you start reading and you look at the cover again, and then you get to the end of the book, you look at the cover again, and you'll probably start seeing a little bit of things that you didn't notice. It was like, oh, that's kind of thing. It was purely accidental, or maybe it wasn't. The Lily Wong books all have a grid of 8 squares. Well, 8 is a very lucky number in Chinese culture. Little things.
Amazing.
Great question.
Any other questions for Tori?
What were some of the first names of the book that you discarded? You said you renamed this many times.
I did. Do I even want to tell? Do I want to tell? Yeah, sure, why not? Because that's my cousin asking. I can't tell him no. How am I going to tell him no? So
I can ask him later.
Yeah. The screenplay was called The Gift. When I was working on the novel, at one point it was called Quimbanda, and I came back to Quimbanda. I loved Quimbanda, but I was told nobody's going to know what Quimbanda is, and they can't pronounce it, and they're going to go, what kind of book is this? Quimbanda what? And Walk On, exactly. So that was 86. At some point it was called, oh God, Carioca's Crusade. It was called Rio's Cross. Yeah. And then when it came with this publisher, we brainstormed, my agent, the publisher, me, and went through all of these, like, spreadsheet of words and things, and tried out all these things. And then when we hit on Dance Among the Flames, we all went, bingo.
Yeah, good choice.
That's the one.
It conveys such a sense of intentional danger.
Intentional danger.
Intentional danger. If you're dancing among the flames,
yes.
You're dancing on purpose, but how close do you get? How edgy is it? And I read the first 4 chapters while I was having a glass of wine.
Oh my gosh, how fabulous.
I said, man, she's brutal.
Oh, I don't pull any punches in this. I gotta tell you. So at some point, this could have been my debut novel. And I gotta say, I think the gods interceded, because this book would have been a lot. It would have been a lot to do justice to as a debut writer, but it would have been a lot to handle having it published and owning it and marketing it and saying, yeah, no, this is what it is. Because at some point, I was so relieved when Publishers Weekly gave it a starred review, I cried. Because for a while there, I was thinking, are they going to come at me with pitchforks? I don't even know. But when I we were talking about branding before, and how 20 years ago it might have been kind of harder to do this. It was really important to me that readers know that I wasn't in a crime fiction zone. I never thought of myself as a crime fiction author. I never heard the term crime fiction until I was picked up by a diversity-focused crime fiction imprint. And then I went, oh, it's a thing. You know, I knew about mysteries and thrills. I didn't occur to me. I wasn't thinking in that way. I was busy teaching ninja arts across the country. What did I know about, you know? I read it. I just didn't know what, you know, didn't think about it that way. So it was really important to me, the timing of this book, between the third Lily Wong book and the fourth Lily Wong book that I'm writing. You know, we'll see what happens with that. And it was important to me that I bring this out into the world so that readers knew, you know, they didn't get too comfy. Because my short stories are in a whole bunch of different anthologies, but most people don't know that. Yeah.
Tori, you truly, your joy just resounds on the page throughout your entire series, and I really enjoy that. How do you maintain that level of enjoyment factor for writing and the enthusiasm that you clearly express through your books?
Oh, well, thank you for that. I think I have a little passion, a little bit of passion. I know I have a whole lot of energy and definitely enthusiasm. And so I think those things are just kind of inside of me. And I got to tell you, when I was a little girl, I lived in make-believe. You know, that's how I played in make-believe. And those make-believe stories, they weren't your, you know, calm. They were Dance Among the Flames make-believe. They were out there wild, whatever. And so I think maybe there's a wee bit part of me that's bigger than life, shall we say, and so effusive. And so when I'm writing too, and I think with that musical quality, I like that prose. I like that language that has that sense of song and richness, and I don't know. Yeah. Did that answer the question? I have no idea.
Absolutely.
Good answer.
There was a question that came in online. Somebody's interested in how did you first get into martial arts? You were talking about that a little bit, but then how did you find your way to this ninja community? And what exactly is it?
Great question. Great question. How did I get into martial arts? I was always interested in it. My best friend, when I was growing up, her grandfather was Run Run Shaw, did all, you know, Hong Kong movies and all that kind of stuff. And so we used to watch, you know, Hong Kong films at her mother's theater in Chinatown. Always wanted to do it. But I had started dancing early. My mother would always say, you have to choose dance or soccer, dance or diving, dance or martial arts. I always chose dance. But I always wanted to. So what happened was when I thought I had retired from dance, put my son into karate. And so there I was sitting on the couch watching my son. Yes, I was one of those mothers sitting, watching him do karate. And I'm like, I can do that. I can do that. But I had retired from dance, you know, also because of a lot of injuries and stuff, you know. But I couldn't stand any longer. So after a couple of months, I took a class. And I had been talking to the teacher. And my very first class, this was a crazy class. It had mixed rank from white belt, that was me, to one step away from black belt. And there were only about a dozen of us. And so it was everybody, you know. And so first class, he says, I think you know the first form. And I said, I do. And he said, could you demonstrate for that? Demonstrate for us. And so I did that. He goes, I think you probably know the second form. I said, I do. Could you demonstrate that for us? So then it became a whole class of what can Tori do? So in the course of this thing, I ended up doing every single jump, leaping, spinning, kick, every punch, fighting things, and sparring. They put helmets on me. They're like, I'm sorry, you can't hit anybody in the head because you don't know what you're doing. You have no control. But they can hit you in the head because they have control and you have a helmet. And I'm like, okay, you know. And so this is my first class. I was hooked. I was absolutely hooked. I'm like, this rocks. It was a little scary, but it rocked. So I started in karate. And after, you know, about a year, I was teaching, but I was still coming up in the ranks. And my teacher at the time had discovered the ninja arts because Stephen K. Hayes was giving him an opportunity to learn it, and he was considering turning his second dojo into this ninja art thing. And I went, I was getting stalled. And so I said, well, tell you what, how about if I keep teaching in this and I go learn that at the same time, and I'll tell you how it is from a student's point of view. And I got hooked in it. What ended up happening was I ended up earning a black belt in both of them within a month of each other. And I found myself teaching more ninja stuff when I was supposed to be teaching Tong Soo Do. And I realized, no, I need to go full-on ninja. So what is this whole full-on ninja thing? There actually are 9 lineages that have been passed down to one grandmaster in Japan, passed down to another. Stephen K. Hayes came in early and trained when there were just, I don't know, dozen, 20, and then was told, go west, young man, and blew up on Black Belt magazine. People started hearing about it. So many people traveling to Japan, learning this wonderful, rich, comprehensive martial arts. So many teachers going out around the world. There are thousands of us. They're in your neighborhood, trust me. And I don't know a single assassin. Everybody I know is out working for the good, working to empower others. It's a magnificent art and a lineage, so there you go. Yeah?
Have you found that the martial arts and your proficiency in that has helped you with your writing? It's given you some boost.
Well, it certainly has helped in writing fighting scenes, I'll tell you.
Right. But I'm just saying overall confidence, because
yes.
you know you can take care of yourself. Yeah. So I'm going to put this out, and whatever the public thinks, the public thinks.
Yeah, I think
it's giving you a freedom.
I think that is very true. There is a lot of confidence that comes from martial arts, and of course the authenticity in writing fight scenes. But here's something specific to ninja arts. Ninja are adaptive. It's very hard to teach because you're not just doing something and that's the way you do it, and in any situation, this is how you punch, this is how you kick, this is how you throw. With us, there is a relationship between you and I, and there is an energy between you and I, and we are creating it in the moment, and I'm going to direct it and capitalize it in a way that hopefully I will win, and probably nobody will know why. And so there's something about that in writing, that sense of fluidity, that sense of, no, it's not always like this. You're going to be in that moment, in that character, in that emotion, and you're going to move, and you're going to go, and you're going to find it. And that knowing that you will find it, because it's what you do. So
you're trying to pull your audience into finding that as you're writing.
I never think about it that way, really, but I think about me doing that as I'm writing. I know I'll find it, even when I'm really frustrated.
I'm going to say this now because in case I don't get to talk to you after this, but many years ago, when I had black, and now I have black and botch, I thought of calling it ninja horsemanship. If you think about what we talked about, because it is the relationship, and it doesn't look like the same punch, and it doesn't look like the same, it's this other thing. And
absolutely. My friend here, she's become a great friend of mine. I have the best readers in the world, and so many of my readers become dear friends. And Lauren is a tremendous horsewoman. And so she was saying at some point she had thought about calling her company Ninja Horsemanship. Was that it?
And then it could be I could have the black horse, and only you have like an eye, right?
That's so funny. Yeah, but she took me horseback riding today, and if you guys go to my Facebook or my Instagram, you'll see a video of me taking one of her horses up through the desert, and just kind of, it was glorious, a glorious day. But there's so many similarities in the way that I do martial arts and the way she works with horses. It's very true. And it all reflects in the writing. I love the direction of this conversation. It's so interesting.
It is.
To me, anyway.
It's a great video. You ought to check it out. Tori's like riding out in the desert.
On this horse that's only been out on the trails 3 times.
This is her 3rd time, and she's never had anybody else ride her but me, so that's Tori's thing. big cheese there.
And I made it here in one piece, so yay!
Any last questions for Tori before we move on? Okay. I'd like to thank everyone in the audience and those tuning in virtually to our author event with Tori Eldridge, whose new book is Dance Among the Flames. Thank you, Tori, for visiting us again.
Oh, thanks so much.
Hello. We hope you're enjoying our programs and podcasts with authors. We'd like to expand them, and your help would be appreciated. Please make a donation at poisonedpenfoundation.org. 100% of the proceeds will go to help connect authors with readers in this difficult time. Thank you.